Just got a solder and hot air station, and I've put it in this space in my work area, and I wanted a bit more extra lighting. Bought a couple of lights off of eBay. I went for some day running lights that you typically put on cars rather than some LED strips. They're just the right size for what I wanted. Came with all the wiring pre-done, so it seemed to be a very easy option. Just going to shove them up under here. Should give me a bit more light while I'm working. I like to test things as I go along, so I previously have built a lab power supply. Uses an old laptop power supply to power this thing. This is something I got from China. 3D printed the shell for it. Lets you select the voltage and the current that you want, and it just easily allows you to apply a voltage to stuff that you're testing. So in this case, just putting 12 volts through and making sure that it all works okay. Next bit was to add a switch into the circuit. A couple of cheap switches again that I'd lying around. This is just going to allow me to turn it on and off when I need it. Just loosen up the terminals on the switch that I'm going to attach to the light. It's only a little cheap switch, but with 12 volts, not an issue. Hardly any current going through this thing. Just get it nice and tight. Tidy up the cable a bit. At this point, the cable's quite a bit. It's quite skinny. Wasn't really being held by the switch much, so I thought I'd add a bit of tape just to fatten it up a bit. And after adding the tape, it fitted in a lot better, nice and snug. As always, test as you go along. So again, just back to the bench power supply, connecting it to the other side of the switch this time, still on 12 volts, and just making sure the switch works. Next bit was to add some wire to the other side of the switch. This was going to go into the 12 volt LED driver. Just got some scrap cable, made sure it was long enough for what I needed, and connected it to the terminals on the other side of the switch. Once the cables are in nice and tight, another quick test, again using the bench power supply, just putting 12 volts through it, making sure it's still working all the way up to this stage. That's the cover that's going to go on the switch. I'd wired both lights directly to the switch rather than trying to chain them together. They're both going straight into the switch. Switch cover just secured with 2 screws, so get them in nice and tight, and that's the switch done. Another good reason for going with the car daylight running lights is that in the pack you get some sticky tape, double-sided sticky tape, all cut to length, so it's just the right size of the lights itself. Peel it off, stick it onto the light, peel off the other side, and stick it where you want it to go. So this is where the first one was going to go, over to the left hand side. Just setting it back a little bit so I don't see the sticky too much. That's it. That's that one in place. Put the other one next to it. Again with the sticky. This time I pinched a little bit of sticky from that one. I was going to use that on the switch itself. So just cut it a little bit short. The switch was going to go in this corner, out of view. And with the double-sided sticky tape on it, just pushing it into place. So we've got the switch connected to the two lights now. Need to do a bit of tidy up on the wires, and then I've got the wires coming from the switch to be attached to a 12 volt LED driver. And as always, testing as I go. So before I fit the driver, just make sure everything works in situ. Looks good. Nice and bright, big difference from when I'm doing some soldering work. This is a 12 volt LED driver that I got off eBay. I went for a 6-watt driver, got a pack of 3 for £8.65, so not expensive at all. 240 volts in one side, 12 volts out the other. So I've got an old plug that I found, and the idea is to attach the plug obviously to the supply side, and then attach the load to the 2 wires that I've got going into the switch. So what I'm doing here is just sorting out the ends on the wires, cutting out a couple of pieces of heat shrink tubing, and I'm going to solder the wires together and tidy it up and protect it with the heat shrink tubing. Got a larger piece, the yellow piece of heat shrink tubing on the flex that goes to the plug, and I've got 2 smaller pieces of heat shrink tubing near the driver itself. Out of the way at the moment because I'm just tinning the wires and soldering the live and the neutral wires together. Making sure that not only I get a good connection, but it's nice and strong, just in case if they ever do get pulled, then they're not going to come apart. With the wires soldered together and the heat shrink tubing in place, just getting out the hot air gun, and I'm just going to put hot air over the tubing just to shrink it down and protect those wires. First time I'd used the hot air gun on the tubing, I was a little bit cautious at first with the heat, could have gone a bit hotter. I'm adjusting it there, just to increase the temperature, just start get it shrinking a bit faster. Just finishing off the live wire, and then once that's done, put them together and then use the larger tubing over both of them, just to add another extra bit of protection and just to make it a lot neater finish. Again, just putting the hot air over it, shrinking it down. So that's the supply side done. Then just do the same on the load side. So connecting the wires together, soldering them up so I've got a good connection. You can see the 2 blue pieces of heat shrink tubing already in place, ready to slide over once I finish soldering. Just adding a bit of a flux type connection, as I wasn't getting the solder to flow all around the wire. Happy with that, and then just putting the heat shrink tubing over the connections and getting the hot air back on it, this time with the right setting so it's a lot faster. And that's it. Just before final power on, just double check before you plug it in, make sure the supply is definitely going to the supply side of the driver, the load is going to the load side, everything's nice and safe, and give it a test. And that's it, all done. Thank you for watching the video.